All right, let's dive in. If you've been following along on your web development journey, you've gotten really good at building the stuff users actually see. But today we cross a super important bridge. We're going from the front of the stage to backstage, from the visible to the powerful engine behind it all. We are talking about Node.js.
You know, it helps to think of web development like a big theater show. Everything you've done so far has been on the client side, or the stage. You've gotten a handle on HTML and CSS, that's modules 1 and 2 of your course, to build everything the audience sees and touches. But what about everything happening behind the curtain? That's the server side, the backstage. This is the hidden machinery, the engine that controls the lights, the data, and all the logic that makes the show actually work. So the big question is, how do we connect these two worlds? How do we get the backstage crew talking to the actors on stage? For a long time, that meant you had to learn a completely different language for the backstage. It worked, sure, but it wasn't always the smoothest process.
And that is exactly where Node.js comes in. It is a total game changer. What it does, simply, is it lets you take the JavaScript you already know from building front ends and use it to run the server. All of a sudden, you're speaking the same language everywhere. You can build the entire show from front to back with one unified skill set.
And if you're following the Advanced Internet Technologies syllabus, listen up, because this one is huge. Node.js makes up a full 25% of your final grade. It is an absolutely foundational part of this course.
And when you look at the whole picture here, you can see just how that 25% fits in. Node.js has the same weight as Angular, the front-end framework you're going to learn next. It is the absolute core of the server-side story here. It's the critical link between the HTML and CSS you already know and the powerful dynamic apps you're about to build.
So, let's get properly introduced to this technology that acts as our bridge. I mean, how does it pull it off? How is it so fast and so efficient? What's the secret to its power?
Well, it really boils down to three key things. First, it runs on Google's V8 engine, which is the same super-fast JavaScript engine that powers the Chrome browser, so you know it's fast. Second, and this is the big one, this is the magic trick, it uses something called a non-blocking I/O model. And third, because of that model, it can somehow handle thousands of connections at the same time using just a single thread.
Okay, we have to zero in on that non-blocking secret sauce. This single concept is what makes Node.js so revolutionary. It's the reason it's so incredibly lightweight and can scale up so much better than older server technologies.
Now, this diagram might look a little complicated at first, but the idea behind it is actually really simple. See, at the very heart of Node.js is something called the event loop. Just think of it like a hyper-efficient manager. Instead of taking one task and working on it from start to finish while everyone else waits in line, it takes a request, delegates it to the system to work on, and immediately, and I mean immediately, moves on to the next request in the line.
You know, there's a perfect analogy for this. Imagine a waiter in a restaurant. A traditional or blocking waiter would take your order, walk it to the kitchen, and then just stand there tapping his foot, waiting for the chef to cook your meal. It's horribly inefficient, right? A Node.js waiter, on the other hand, takes your order, gives it to the kitchen, and instantly moves on to the next table. It only comes back to your task when the kitchen rings the bell saying the food's ready.
And as you can see in this picture, that single-threaded, non-blocking model means our one waiter, our single thread, can serve a whole restaurant of people without ever getting stuck. The main thread is never blocked. It's always free to take new requests, which makes the whole system unbelievably fast and able to handle a ton of traffic.
Okay, so that's the theory. That's how it works under the hood. But how do we actually build things with Node.js in the real world? Well, that brings us to the single most important tool in any Node developer's toolkit, NPM.
NPM stands for Node Package Manager, and it is, no joke, the largest software library in the entire world. The best way to think about it is like a giant free app store, but for developers. It's this massive collection of pre-written code called packages that you can just pull into your project so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time.
So, NPM is really three things all rolled into one. First, there's the website, which is where you go to browse and discover all these packages. Then you've got the command line interface, or CLI. That's the tool you'll actually be using in your terminal to install and manage stuff. And finally, there's the registry itself, the enormous public database where all of this code actually lives.
So how does your project keep track of all this stuff you're adding? Well, if you look at this code here, you'll see a file called package.json.
Think of this as the official recipe or the ingredient list for your application. It lists every single outside package your project needs to run. That way, any other developer can grab your code, run one simple command, and have the exact same setup you do. It's brilliant.
Now, these packages that NPM manages are filled with things called modules. And modules are really the fundamental building blocks of any Node.js application. They're like individual Lego bricks that you just snap together to build whatever you can imagine.
And these bricks basically come in 3 flavors. You've got your core modules. These are built right into Node.js from the start, things for handling web servers or your computer's file system. Then you have local modules, which are the ones you write yourself just for your application. And finally, you have third-party modules, and that's all the amazing stuff you download from the NPM registry.
So, how do you actually use one of these modules in your code? It all comes down to one simple, powerful function: requiring. This little command is your key to unlocking that entire ecosystem of code.
Okay, let's put it all together. Take a look at the code on this slide. Believe it or not, this is a complete working web server. That's it. We just require the built-in HTTP module, we tell it to create a server, and we tell it what to say when someone visits. In just a handful of lines, you have a running backend. That right there is the power and the beauty of Node.js.
So now that we've got the foundational concepts down, let's zoom out a bit. What does all this actually mean in the real world? Why is learning this skill so incredibly valuable?
Well, Node.js is the engine behind some of the biggest applications you use every day. We're talking the backends for massive social networks, for complex single-page applications, for data streaming services, for Internet of Things devices, for huge online booking and tracking systems. The skills you're learning are literally building the modern web as we know it.
So what's the big takeaway? The best way to think about Node.js is as the central nervous system for the apps you're going to build. It's what connects that beautiful front end you'll create with a framework like Angular to all the powerful data and logic living on the server. It's the bridge that turns a static page into a living, breathing application.
And with that, you have officially crossed that bridge. You've gone from focusing only on what people see to understanding how to build the engine that makes things work. The possibilities are absolutely massive. So, there's really only one question left to ask. What are you going to build first?